Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Hello, Engagers. Welcome back to this episode of Professor Game Podcast. And today we are with Alyea. But Alyea, are you prepared to engage?
I sure am.
Alyea Sandovar is a Ph.D., of course, and a game and play consultant. She works with trainers, consultants, entrepreneurs to add more fun and deepen engagement through, yes, you guessed it, gamification. And she has a whole slew of degrees, a Ph.D. in game production, a master's degree in psychology, another master's degree in human organizational systems, and a bachelor in public relations and communication. And she has worked with academic institutions, nonprofits, game studios, corporations, and startups. She's also passionate about creating high-quality products with ease and fun, and believes in creating playful products should not be a headache. She's originally from Colombia, but she considers herself a world citizen who has also lived in Costa Rica, in the USA, in Florida, in Texas, California, Amsterdam, and is currently residing short-term in Berlin. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. So, Alyea, is there anything that we shouldn't have skipped that we did, or anything else you want to highlight before we get started?
Wow, no. Hearing myself or hearing my background, it's like, wow, that's a mouthful.
Absolutely. And she's also part of the Playful Creative Summit.
Yes.
Did I get the order right?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Which is going to happen in April. We recently had an interview as well with David. So if you want to check that out as well, it is in the books already. But before we get into that, Alyea, we want to know, what does Alyea do? What does a regular day with you look like? What do you do on a regular basis?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think my day changes day by day. And I assume when you're asking me for my day, I imagine you are asking me for my work day. So let's just go with that. So I begin my day with what I call my playful practice. So I don't just wake up with an alarm. I wake up naturally. And then I'm very serious about sort of starting my day in a good note. So I do 5 to 7 things that really make me feel good and playful and happy. And that includes things from exercise, meditation, drawing, journaling, reading something. Especially this year, I got really hooked on watching at least 2 or 3 YouTube videos of comedians before I got my day started, just to make me laugh a little bit. And just get myself into a different type of zone even before I have breakfast. And then, of course, I have breakfast. And usually the morning I spend doing some sort of a personal education. So I will learn something new around gamification, and maybe I'm usually taking some sort of course or business development. So I spend the morning focusing on that. I have lunch. Usually then I go for a walk. Oh yeah, I definitely take a break at some point around 11 to go get myself a cortado, which is my ultimate favorite coffee. So I'll go get that. And then after lunch is when, say, my work begins. I will have a series of client appointments. Sometimes I meet with David, my co-founder, at the Playful Creative Summit, and we plan things. Or I'll have meetings with part of the people that help me, my administrative assistant and things like this. So client meetings, it just depends on what the day is. Or maybe I have a podcast recording like this one. And and then I do, if I need to plan something, if I'm working on a particular project, maybe on that day I'll spend an hour or two preparing something for that project. And usually I end my day around 7:30 or 8, and then have dinner and, I don't know, do something fun with a friend or watch a right now I'm really into Christmas movies. So I'm pretty much going through all of the Netflix Christmas movies. And then I just try to end my note at, my day in a high note. Oh yeah. And I also, I think of myself as a very spiritual person. So before I go to bed, I do all my prayers for all of my family and all the people that I love and make sure that they are taken care of. And then I go to sleep. And that's my day.
Sounds very, very complete. That's for sure. You did all the things. You tick all the boxes.
Tick all the boxes. Yeah.
Fantastic. And talking about ticking all the boxes, sometimes, we create that list of those to-do lists or those things that we want to achieve, and we get into projects and we want to do this and that, but it doesn't always go the way we expect, for sure, right? So we want to get into a story, one of those stories of a time, you set out to do something, but, it ended up in a fail or a first attempt in learning, or maybe what you would call your favorite failure. And what happened there? What was your story? Of course, don't get into any specifics. You can't get into, NDAs and companies and so on, but we want to be in that story with you. We want to learn from that story and see how you managed to survive basically after that. So can you tell us a story of course, ideally from something playful, creative?
Oh, sure. This was a story about a major project that I was a part of. And basically, this was a project that no one knew what they were doing. And so, I won't say any names or anything, but it was the first time the client was doing what they were doing. It was the first time that the game design company that had hired us was doing what they were doing. It was the first time the game development company that was hired by the game design company was doing what they were doing. And it was the first time that I was really working in such a large project. And I'd worked managing before, but I'd never worked in this specific type of role before. And so what happened is I was in charge of this particular part of production, and we needed to have the MVP done for the client by a certain amount of time. And what happened is because no one knew what they were doing, I was attending all these meetings to try to understand what I need to do, but then I was falling behind on my actual production tasks. And so what happened is because I was falling behind my production tasks, I could not take care of making sure that that MVP version was actually good and high quality. And then because of that, when it was released to the client, it was awful. Not only was it awful, but in front of the whole team, and at this point we were 70 people, I think.
Wow, large team.
Large team. The CTO, along with the lead manager for the entire project, very openly shared how my department, without naming me specifically, but considering I was a department of, mainly me and then a few others, but my department failed, right? It's we failed in this department. And I'm standing right next to them. I'm going, oh my gosh. And I was like, are they going to fire me right now? Because
what's going on?
What's going on? And they were Dutch. So Dutch people usually are very direct, but they didn't, I guess in work, they don't really tell you that maybe there's something off. So I was really it was just so overwhelming by the number. But it's I had this lead role, but in addition to that, I had to do everyday tasks to make sure that the game that we were building was good. So luckily after that, I sat down with the main manager and then we talked about why I had fallen behind. And I wish I'd been able to tell him ahead of time that I was falling behind. I thought everything was going to be okay. And it just turned out that there was too much work in my department for the number of people that we had at that time. And so luckily then we were able to discuss how to hire more people, organize it, and they didn't also blame me very much. I think they all knew that the whole project was a mess because they were okay, if we can't hold our part, I don't know, maybe they felt like we can't, hold her completely responsible for this either. So, but after that, once we got the right team and got them, and we hired people very quickly to join my team, I was able to get on top of everything, and I was able to organize everything, and then we thrived. Then we started doing really well. But so that was a failure. And then actually my team did such a good job, or at least my area, that we were recognized in the project later. And after this project ended, the client itself hired me to do more work for them. So maybe that's a down and a win at the end.
We always learn from what to do next. But I do have a question from that story, because, of course, at that point, you didn't know what you didn't know. But if you were going to face something that was in a certain capacity similar, what would you do different? Like, what was the lesson that you took away from those difficulties of the small team not arriving on time? Like, what did that look like?
Well, I think the lesson is that I sort of underestimated how important I was, or how my own responsibility. I think at that point I was sort of leaning on the higher ups to kind of pull through, or I don't know, like there's this feeling of like, this is my responsibility, but ultimately if they need certain features in the game for the client, then it's also their responsibility to make sure it gets there. So I think what I learned from that is that I needed to be a lot clearer about what needed to go in this one release, and also that it was my baby, so to speak, right? Like
taking ownership.
Exactly. Taking ownership. I didn't quite take ownership at that point because it felt, I was also really new in the project, right? So I felt like, okay, I'm just getting my feet wet. But if I could do it again, or if I was to come into a similar role where I'm a little bit thrown in the deep end, so it's something that I haven't done before, definitely taking ownership from the beginning, but fully, right? Not waiting for someone to give me permission, or not waiting for someone to tell me what needs to go in there, right? I was very good at trying to understand and learn, and okay, I need to get this, I need to go to that meeting and make sure I get the information from here. But really this idea of like, no, this is
it's on me.
This is on me. This is my product. This is my team. If I know that I'm sort of like swamped and not going to have enough time, I would now tell someone like, hey, I've been in this situation before. We need to hire people right away, for example. So, yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Alyea, we want to go from difficulties to actual success, of course. Yeah. And of course, we want to see, the time you faced a challenge and you solved it using hopefully gamification or some similar technique. We want to be there with you and see some of the success factors as well. I'm not looking for, the golden game mechanic or anything. Okay. It's just like, what was your experience? We want to sort of be there with you.
So something that I was successful at?
Yeah, one of those proud moments maybe. And there, of course, if you want, you can name any names, or if that's not possible, that's fine as well. But just want to be there sort of in the deep end with you and see that experience.
Well, okay, but you want one that's gamification, not life, yeah?
Ideally, yes, of course.
Yeah, okay. So I think this is with one of my clients, my individual clients. So as you know, I work with consultants and entrepreneurs. And without going into too much detail about what this person does. Let's just say that this person trains other people in a particular type of subject. And this population is one that is very difficult to focus in personal development or transformation. And so anyway, my client came to me to get some support on how he could make the training that he was providing more fun and more playful. And so, the thing about, with at least the way that I do gamification is that I also take the person that is delivering it, or the person that's creating the playful experience, as part of the experience. So it's really important for them. I ask everyone to take a playful personality quiz, which is from the Stuart Brown book. And so that they understand the type of playful person that they are. And I think that's really key to when they're doing playful activities, because if you go with their strength, then it helps them, ease into creating some sort of like playful experience. So anyway, so we talked about his playful personality and what he could do. And then we discussed a few things that he could do in terms of playful activities that could be done with this population. So I don't know if I can go into detail on what they were, but I can say what I said was like, what do you know about your people? Like, I think gamification is also about understanding yourself as the person that's delivering it, and then the people who you're serving. And so I was like, what do you know about who they are? What do you know about what's important to them? What do you know about what makes them laugh? Their personalities, these kinds of things. So he described this very interesting profile. It was like a male profile. And so we came up with like really fun activities for them that he would have never come up with. Because my whole thing was like, you got to meet them where they are at, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, it's not just about whether or not these kinds of activities fit you solely, right? You have to kind of have that like sweet spot in the middle where it's your personality, and then you have to figure out things that entice them and make them feel happy. And so I helped them come up also with some sort of cultural memes for this group and ways to like sort of tell jokes and and things like this. I mean, it doesn't sound too gamified, but really he got really a lot of energy from this session, and later told me that he's having so much fun with his client groups, and they're learning so much more because they're super excited and they feel like he gets them, even though they come from two completely different types of cultural backgrounds and philosophies.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds very, very good. Very interesting in a way of getting into the minds of those other people. And that actually leads me very, very well into the next question, which is about your process. So again, imagine you're facing a client like that one, or any other one. They ask you to build a solution using gamification or playful strategies. How do you approach this? Do you have a process? Do you have a framework? Like, how do you do these things when you have to do them? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of a mix of different things that I've learned. So I tend to use the Mda model a lot, the mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics model in games, because what it does is it takes into account the three components of what I think is really important in gamification. So it takes into account the designer, which in this case would be either the person delivering the training or the person delivering the course or the program or whatever, or the business owner. It takes into account the players, so the customers. And then, of course, it takes into account the thing that you're creating, whether it's the program, the course, or whatever. So I think that's really important. The reason why I say this, like, also, as I mentioned before, in my opinion, most gamification folks don't take into account the designer part. And maybe it's because my dissertation was so focused also on production and the designer mindset that it's a really important part for me to do. So usually what we do, and then for the middle part, I actually borrow, not all of it, but I borrow some of the thinking from Yukai Chao that does Octalysis Prime, which I'm sure you know of. I'm one of his members, and I really like the way he actually helps people think about how they're designing the product. So anyway, my process really, I begin by asking people to always take the play personality quiz. That gives me an idea of who they are, what's important to them. I also have like an intensive questionnaire that tells me about their business, who their customers are, their values, what's important to them. And then so they'll come to me and we have different types of sessions. So usually we can do what I call like a ideation session. And usually these are more to give them cool ideas that they can do in a playful environment. And that's sort of very loose, not very bounded. And it takes into account their values, their business values, what they want to get out of it, their play personality. Then if they really want to design a solution, so for example, I have one client who really wanted to redo a website where she was giving this online travel experience. So in her case, to be able to do that, then we also looked at, okay, who are her players? Who are her customers? And it gets really complicated if I give them a bunch of options in terms of different types of player types. So I just use Bartle's for types. And I know we have many other ways of looking at them and lots of other gamification player types, but just for simplicity to help them sort of think about the different ways that people can complete their courses or their online products. So we look at that and we look at what's important to them, right? So, okay, so if you think these are your player types, what kinds of things are going to be important to them? Are they going to want power? Are they going to want stuff? What is it in the hierarchy of the rewards that they might want? And then for the designed experience, usually this is where I borrow from Yukai. He always says, make sure you have your business goals really outlined. So I make sure that they outline what their business goals are for their particular program or their particular training or their particular course, and that they are ordered from highest, most important to least important. And then based on that, then we start sort of kind of thinking about how it should be designed. And then we have several sort of design sessions where we're going into whatever that is, the program or the course or whatever. And then we sort of co-design it together. And then usually they go away and maybe they have a virtual assistant or someone, a graphic designer that does all the nitty gritty. But then the thinking we do sort of collaboratively. That's when I'm doing gamification. I've also been hired to just do like little games. And in that case, then the process is different because then it becomes more of a research process. If I do games, then I interview, let's say for the Rheumatoid Arthritis Association in the Netherlands for the children. I did a game for them. And so that was different because in that case, I just interviewed the children, interviewed the parents to try to get the feeling for what the experience is like to have it. And the idea was to create a game that the children that have RA could play with their friends who don't, so they could understand what it's like to have RA. And so I did interviews and I also did research, a lot of like a literature review to understand like any kind of qualitative research that has been done to understand the experience of growing up with RA, what it's like for the parents. And then from there, I just designed a game and then I play tested it and then we released it. So it just sort of depends on the kind of work that I'm doing. But those are the two types of ways that I go about it.
Sounds very, very interesting and many, many keys to take away from that. Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification. And Alyea, what would you say we've gone through failure, success, your process? And I mentioned this word before. I'm not looking for the golden mechanic or anything similar, but is there a best practice, something that you say, well, if you think about this, you somehow incorporate this into your process, into your thought process, your project, it's going to at least make it better. Is there such a thing as a best practice in your opinion?
I know what my best practice is.
Sure.
So I think I have two elements to it. The first one is to listen, really listen to what your clients' needs are and what the needs of their clients are. And the second for me is intuition. So I feel that listening to what you could call a creative intuition, I feel like I tap into what Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic calls, this big magic that we all can access with creative ideas. And so I think my best practice is really listen. And as I'm listening, I'm tapping into this big magic and just kind of pulling ideas that would match what I'm listening to. Interesting.
Very, very good stuff. And talking about recommendations, we get into the recommendation space here. Is there, after hearing these questions, after, getting a bit of the vibe of the podcast, is there somebody that comes to your mind, somebody you would like to listen to in an episode of Professor Game?
Okay, this is a little bit challenging because I'd have to have looked through all your podcasts. And if I miss someone,
repeating it is possible. I mean, to this date, we have over 150 episodes already uploaded. So I know that is a huge challenge. So,
yeah, exactly.
Again, at the top of your head, is there somebody that comes to your mind?
Top of my head.
I mean, I'm a good friend, and I always use this example. It was like episode 10 or something. He said Miyamoto from Nintendo.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
again, like anything crazy is accepted for sure.
Yeah, okay. And I'm trying to think like who I'd really want to have on the episode. I don't know. I guess the first person that popped into my head when you said it, even though he's like my mentor, would be like Yukai, if you've already had him on. I'm not sure.
Yes, Yukai. In fact, I mean, and he is absolutely fantastic. I consider him a friend as well. He's been in Madrid. He was in Madrid once for a conference, and we got to spend some time together. But yes, Yukai was actually episode 1. Literally, the first episode of the podcast was with Yukai. So that is a fantastic recommendation. Yukai, I use him in my workshops as well. Well, I use his theories and his ideas on my workshop as well. So yeah, absolutely, Yukai is a very, very good one.
Should I come up with something more fancy, like something more obscure? Like
Yukai is fancy. Yukai is a very good consultant. I mean,
he's awesome and he's so nice and so laid back. He's such a good person. So
absolutely. And again, I mean, I don't know. He there's so much that he has to offer. In fact, we had him in another episode then talking about in this coronavirus environment. We were talking about his new framework. Well, one of his new frameworks called Remote for remote working. I don't know if you've heard of that from him before.
No, I haven't actually.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
that's another episode you can listen to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Cool.
That would be your recommendation for sure. A very good one as well. I use some of the things that you were mentioning as well when I'm teaching gamification and doing workshops as well. I also use part of that for sure because it's a very solid framework that he's built and all the things that go around it as well. And again, more recommendations. What about a book? Is there a book that you would recommend an audience like this one, like The Engagers?
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to think like what would be this is a good 1 second. I feel like I want to like think of something really good. Because I feel like any book that I mention, people are gonna like know what it is, right?
Well, that's okay, and that's even good.
Yeah?
Why not?
Okay. Because of course the one that I read and I really love, of course, is Reality is Broken. That really was a good
Jane McGonigal.
Yeah, that was a really good book. And so that just came to the top of my head. And then of course I read lots of playbooks. And but they're all so long.
Jane is fantastic, and she has that book. She has the other one. She has a TED Talks. I mean, Jane is absolutely fantastic for sure, and she's been requested as a guest as well before on the podcast. She
hasn't come on yet.
No, she hasn't.
Oh.
I mean, I have to be completely fair as well. I haven't asked her directly, so I can't say she said no or anything. So, I mean, at this point, we'll see when we can have her on as well. That is a very good book. I actually have it in my bookcase right behind me, the yellow book.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a very good book. It's one of my first that I read when I got into games research, actually.
Yeah, and it's very inspirational. Yeah. It has a lot of references, very good for academic research as well, but it also has a lot of inspiration, like many of the things that you could do, like the dreaming of the future. That is a very nice feature of that book for sure. So it's very, very inspiring. Yeah,
in terms of like a simple, quick book. Yeah, you put me in a spot there. I should have thought that through a bit more.
Absolutely, no worries. And now you are actually going to be in the spotlight for 2 questions. First one is, what would you say is your superpower? That thing that you do at least better than most other people, of course, in the world of games, gamification, and playful activities.
Well, okay, I'm going to be super honest with you that my superpower is fed into games and playful activities, but I wouldn't say it comes from my skill set from my background in games. Honestly, I feel like my superpower is prayer. That's my superpower.
There you go. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alyea, the other one of the spotlight, and this is actually going to be a difficult one, right? Get ready.
Okay.
What would you say is your favorite game?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. Everyone always asks me that. That's such a hard question. Okay, I'll tell you one of the games that I liked the most in the last decade. How about that?
Sounds great.
Yeah, so it was actually by someone who I did an interview with, and I really enjoyed his game. I think it came out 7 years ago, or maybe the app version came out 6 years ago. But it's Gorogoa. Gorogoa. Yeah.
Gorogoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll try to type that one.
Yeah, it's a really cool like puzzle. It's like a puzzle game. It was made by Jason Roberts, and then he did it on his own. And later, I think it was published in March of 2018 on Xbox One. So there you go.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Gorogoa. That is one of your favorite games at the very least.
Yes, one of my favorite. It was just so beautiful. It's such a beautiful design. It's so imaginative. It's a puzzle story game. In general, I like I like more indie type games, and I know it took him like 4 years to make it happen, and it's just such a beautiful story. So yeah.
Absolutely. Sounds like an amazing game. And before we go, is there any final piece of advice you want to leave the engagers with? Of course, please let us know where we can find more about you. If you want to have some words as well about the Playful Creative Summit, David also had some words. Your partner in crime in that sense. Before we say, of course, that it's game over for today.
Sure. Final words. I guess I would say, if you're listening to this, you're probably in the game and play sphere, and I want to say thank you for being part of it because it is so needed in the world right now. And I'm very happy and thankful to also be part of it with you. Okay, in terms of where you can reach me, we can find me at my company website, and my company's name is tinthue.com. That's tinthue.com. You can also find us at the playfulcreativesummit.com. That will be a summit that will take place online, absolutely free, April 21st through the 26th of next year. We will be inviting speakers, 45 speakers, to come talk to us about different subjects, including creativity, playfulness, games, and we'll have people from different areas, including makers, designers, game designers, clothing designers, anyone that you can think of. We've even had artists, documentarians. So we'll see who will be there for next year, but I invite you to come join us if that sounds like fun for you.
Sounds like a lot of fun. We can find about that at the playfulcreativesummit.com. We can find about tinthue.com, right, as well?
Yes.
We can find more about you there. Of course, a big thank you to all of us who are creating things and involved in the playfulness and the gamification, game design sphere, and bringing all these amazing things to the world. Thank you for that as well, Alyea. But at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, Engagers, thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast, and I hope you enjoyed this interview with Alyea. Do you have questions that you would like to ask guests, future guests that haven't been on the podcast? All you have to do is go to professorgame.com/question and put your question right there. If it is selected, it will come up in a future episode and you will get your answer. And of course, before you click continue, remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.